again, and welcome back to the Miskatonic Alumni Association. I am Bill, wearing my Miskatonic leather jacket that I earned in my time in university, and as always with me is Terry, fellow alum. How are you doing, Terry?
I can't compare with the Miskatonic one. I've just got my tiny Springbok logo on, but we can always pretend it's got some sort of Miskatonic connotations, can't we?
It's an eldritch creature or whatever. I can't even say what's
Right,
on
it's
it.
a
Yeah,
Shoggoth.
it's a Shoggoth. According to Lovecraft Country, it probably would be a Shoggoth.
Well, I just had some coffee, so the power of coffee compels me to be semi-positive in some respect or aspects of this show. I know we were pretty much like down on episode 8, right?
Yeah, and
Jigabobo, we were really down on that one.
it's weird because when I watched the episode last week, when I watched it and I was taking notes, I was thinking, oh, I think this is going to be one I'll have positive things to say. But then we recorded the episode, and I think I was just whining the whole time. So I apologize for that. I think this program brings out the worst in me.
Well, this time I think I'll let you start us off. Give me your impressions. Like, what did you think after last week's shenanigans that happened? Like, how was this latest episode for you?
Okay, so last week we end off with the demon twins catching up with Diana. Montrose is holding her back, and the one starts feasting on her arm. And so it looks like, oh well, the demon's there to kill her, right? So Diana's probably going to be dead. But then this week starts off. No, we see she's not dead yet. It just killed her arm and rotted her arm. So I guess she's dying from wasting away from it, which was kind of a surprise because I thought the curse was meant to kill her, and though I guess that would be a slow, horrible death, no, it's not quite there. So we kind of pick up pretty much shortly after the last episode ended, and now this episode again, it just seems to be going all over the place, but with the main point being save Diana's life. That's the thread that holds it all together loosely. And they do cover a lot of ground in this episode. We get actual time travel. We get uh, interesting change to the 1920s from the 1930s. I guess we'll get to that in a second. And we get the return of Hippolyta, which we were
Mhm.
lamenting in the previous episode, and we lament in multiple episodes because they just throw her off the show every now and then. And we get a lot of, I don't know if they're loose ends, but we get a lot of plot points that were brought up, like nothing major, but little detailed plot points brought up in earlier episodes are tied up and explained away, at least to some degree, in this episode, which I suppose makes sense as there's only one more episode left, and if you don't tie up the tiny, weird, inconsequential plot points now, you're not going to be able to tie them up when you're wrapping up the whole season in the next episode. But overall, just to give my impression, I was not really thrilled with this episode. It was a ho hum episode for me. I didn't hate it, but at the same time, uh, as you expertly put it before, it was just meandering for me. It just going through the motions until they get to a key set piece or a key plot point, and then they throw that in our face, and then it just goes off wandering down the street until they come across the next plot point. So that's just my brief introduction to episode 9, Rewind 1921. What did you think, Terry?
I think it was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It wasn't memorable. I think probably like the one thing I would like to hit on is like the sort of main event or happening in this while they're time traveling is obviously the Tulsa massacre,
Yeah.
hence, rewind 1921. And specifically, like maybe some I want to quickly discuss is the fact that we've had now two shows on HBO that have used this as like one of their
Yeah.
pivotal things, right? We've had Watchmen and
Hmm.
we've had Lovecraft Country now. Um, and for me, it's really interesting to sort of see how these shows use this. I mean, it is like probably like a really horrific, like racially charged event that's unfortunately been pretty much forgotten, I think, for a lot of
Yeah. Yeah. Really has.
uh, non-colored people, maybe. I know for myself, obviously, I'm not American, but like I had no idea about it until I saw it in Watchmen, and that sort of led me to sort of checking up on it a bit, and being quite astounded at what happened. Um, I was sort of like when I saw this in HBO, sorry, in HBO's Watchmen, and that show really hit it very well, as in like this horrific event causes so many repercussions for the characters and the events and the stories in Watchmen. And it was beautifully done, emotionally charged and everything. And while it's used as well in Lovecraft Country, like very much what I find Lovecraft Country seems to do is the show really manages to make everything pretty average it touches. In
Mm.
this series, despite now knowing about it from having seen it in Watchmen, like I didn't feel, at least for me, that it had any sort of impact other than towards the end where Letty's striding down the road as bombs are raining down around her with her invincibility spell as she's holding the Book of Names.
Mm.
Like is almost more of a background happening than it is anything that like drives these characters. Like we see Montrose, who's obviously got a much more personal sort of attachment to it, what with his background in it. But I didn't feel at any point like the show was better off with it or better off without it. I felt it was just like, oh, this is happening. It's like I'm watching Back to the Future Part Two or Part One or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just pretty much a time travel show. Like I'm just really disappointed they couldn't use such a historically monumental event in a better way,
Yeah.
like Watchmen did. I suppose for me, pretty much coming from Watchmen to this show, like I'm really disappointed.
Uh,
I know that seems to be the pattern, right? But for me, like
yeah.
that just happened. I think on a good note, though, to be a bit more positive, like my first note here is things are coming to a head. Difficult choices will have to be made. Like this
Mm.
was now with old Diana at the start, where they sort of realized, oh man, we've got to go through here, through time, and like Atticus is sort of realizing, like more than likely he's got to now die because he says to Christina, like, okay, look, I will come to this little spell thingy you're going to be doing on the equinox or whatever. Um, so that was a bit good. Like my second note is like a follow up from last week. Where is Gia? Is she still waiting at the table?
Yeah.
Like we're sort of again we're just waiting there. Um, and then I know like Bull, correct me if I'm wrong, but the sheriff, right?
Hmm.
We see he's like dying there.
Yeah.
Was he also, how was he injured again? Was he caught there with these proto Shoggoths or
Yeah,
whatever
he
the
was
previous
he was
episode?
attacked with by the Shoggoth. They like tore him apart. You think he's dead. They throw him into the tree at the end of the last episode. And there he is because he has some kind of magic spell on him too. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the notes I have there. Christina, in the form of William, goes back there as he's dying to mock him, and she goes and she takes that little stone from his desk,
Hmm.
the same stone that she had Ruby hide in his desk. What was the point of that thing?
I sort of, I really didn't catch what she was busy saying at that point, even. Like, I don't know if it was the audio mix or my old ears, but I just couldn't really make out what she was saying. And I was like, okay, is this the thing that's preventing him now from being able to replace his body with, um, you know, a new body, like because you see they sort of keep grafting him
Yeah.
onto a new body, but it just doesn't seem to be taking this time.
Yeah, but
Um,
I thought she explained that away because the damage that was done to him by the Shoggoth, or maybe it's because the Shoggoth via the protection spell on Atticus, that's why it's not going to heal. But I just don't understand what that stone is because she snuck it into his place. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the symbol that was on the stone was the symbol that Tick found in the book that meant protection. It's been
mhm.
so long since we seen it, but I thought in the same episode that was the symbol we saw. So she
Yeah,
had
I
this
recall
thing,
as well.
yeah. So she hides this thing in there, um, because Christina or William wanted her to, and now she comes in and takes it away. But if the stone is the reason why he's not healing, why is she taking it away now? Why wouldn't it be a point that they find that that's there and like that's why I can't heal because this thing's there? But if she takes it away, doesn't that remove its ability to harm him because it clearly needed to be there? There's just no explanation clearly that I gathered for what the purpose of this mysterious stone was. And again, this is where it comes into tying up the inconsequential loose ends that the show's brought before. Because in that episode, it's like, what is that thing? What Ruby sneaks in, she hides this thing, but what's it going to do? And now Christina just like, yep, taking it back. What happened? What is this the result of it? If so, why does it sound like the result's because of the protection spell that created the Shoggoth? I don't know. I don't think they know.
Oh, I think that's our sort of motto for the show so far. I don't think they know either.
Yeah.
And you know, the one thing I recall making a note of, like Christina slash William gets her revenge on the sheriff, but she looks disappointed. Like she had some sort of like when he dies, that sheriff, and she's like sort of like standing over him. Like she doesn't look pleased. She just looks sort of like disappointed. At
Yeah.
least that was the way I took it. I sort of didn't really get why. Is she like sad he died? Is she like, oh well, this isn't really. No, I didn't know how to take it. Like I don't know if you saw it or what are your thoughts on that, but I didn't really
Well,
have any.
I think as I was saying, I just found it to be confusing and not very satisfying because it wasn't clear. Does she hate him? Does she feel bad for him? She clearly doesn't care for him that much because she says she's pretty much leaving him to die, uh, saying that like could watch him die again and again, but this once is enough. But
Hmm.
like I don't know. I honestly don't know. It just the show's all over the place.
Yeah, and then I think after that I know sort of if I remember it's Letty, Montrose, and Tick that are now walking through the alleyways, and that's like they're back in Tulsa and they're time traveling. And I know this is sort of when Tick finds out, I think, that his real father might be Uncle George, right?
Yeah, and I was asking you just before we start recording on this because I remember that scene, but and I mean it comes up through the episode, but it could have been me not listening close enough. But did they confirm it definitely that George is the father, or is it just that's what is suspected? I mean, it's been hinted at before, so it looks like that's where this was going.
Mm.
But was this whole point to confirm that George is the father? Or
It would seem so. Like, I mean, I suppose there's no definitive way for us to know. Like, as I told you, I think I can just assume now that the characters are all taking this as the gospel truth. Like, yeah, okay, Montrose is gay, so um, it clearly makes sense that like Uncle George and Tick's mother had an affair, I would think,
yeah,
and Uncle George is Tick's like biological father. I know at the same point in the show there, Montrose still sort of emotionally says to Tick like, "Look, Tick is still his son. Like he always wanted to be this father for Tick, and I think that was a nice little bit of dialogue actually for Montrose, who I feel is a bit of a maligned character in this poor show. Like we've just seen this like sort of abusive side with some flashes of, like a grasping for happiness. But I thought that was quite nice actually from Montrose.
I
Um,
think this episode did a really good job of building up his backstory and showing how why he can't really be happy. Because
mm,
the way his father was talking to him and beating him, like it seems like every time Montrose would latch on to something that made him happy, like being comfortable in his own skin with his own homosexuality, his father used as a weakness, calling him basically a sissy for doing that and
mm.
saying he's not going to have that in the house. So we see that in earlier episodes, every time Montrose is getting close to those moments where he could be free and be himself and be relaxed, he just immediately pulls back. Like that trauma from the past, those beatings and the berating that he had from his father is still taking over his life now. It's like every character in this show is so developed and nuanced except for the hero. And that's one of the letdowns that we keep harping on.
I think sort of on a little tangent here, another note I've got is that I'm pretty sad about. I really thought that books would play a bigger role in the story. Like our
Yeah,
main
yeah,
our
yeah.
main character is like sort of, one of his forms of escapism is to like escape into this world of books. Like as we see right at the beginning when he's daydreaming, he wakes up and he's got this book. I think it's John Carter, right? The book that he's reading. I can never remember now.
Yeah, yeah. It was John Carter
And
in the
then,
beginning, yeah.
we get these things about the Count of Monte Cristo and why that's so important to him. And there's a little glimpse of a H.P. Lovecraft book at some point, and Uncle George has got this huge like shelf of books. Then his business, and then we just get to a point in the story like, okay, cool, cool. Those books have played their part, and now it's just like thrown out. I was like really hoping there'd be like at least like a little sort of glimpse of a book at some point, as a Easter egg or whatever. So I was
Yeah.
really sad to see that go. But on a better note, like this is the point in the story where Hippolyta returns,
Hippolyta
and
returns.
everyone's like mildly interested that she's back. But something that I actually want to look into a bit more is obviously now Hippolyta and her daughter, their names are given for a reason. I think both are from ancient Greece, right? Hippolyta and Diane or
You're
Diana.
really straining my knowledge of mythology here, but yeah, I think they mentioned before that Hippolyta, yeah, was Greek. I think Diane, was it? Oh, what's the daughter's name? I can't even. Was
I
it
suppose I can do some
Di-
live
Yeah, yeah,
Googling,
yeah,
but
yeah. But anyhow, yeah, Diana does mention it in the last episode when or in this episode, sorry, when no, it's the last episode. Jeez, I'm getting so confused now. When the sheriff is mocking her mother's name, I think she said that it's Greek.
okay, well, like going to the wonderful website known as Wikipedia, and it would seem Hippolyta was the queen of the Amazons, like the daughter of Ares and Oterera, if I'm
Okay.
pronouncing that right. So, I mean, I suppose like as the queen of the Amazons, this is somebody who is like embodies strength. Very much like I know in previous episode, right? We were mentioning that she is one of the strongest characters in this show
Yeah.
as well, as was Uncle George.
And can I
So.
just bring up 2 points
Hmm.
there real quick since it ties in what you said. First, there was that whole idea Tick had that Montrose was going to warn young Uncle George that he was going to get shot to prevent from happening in the future, a la Back to the Future, Marty warning Doc about wearing a bulletproof vest. And for a moment, I was so happy because I thought they're going to return to the future and Uncle George is going to be there to help them in the final episode. And it's like, no, that's not what was happening. So my heart sank again. And number two, yeah, Hippolyta said she spent 200 years in a parallel universe. So
Mm,
what would be 200 years for us? So she's what we saw of her 2 episodes back, she's been training as like some like powerful multi-dimensional warrior for 200 years. And now she comes back to 1955 or whatever year it is to help them. I want to see where this goes in the last episode. I mean, we already see some of what she can do now, which, I mean, not to take away from the little rant of positivity I'm going on here for just a tiny bit, but it just seemed like a matter of convenience that oh yeah, she could work all this now because she was there for 200 years in multiple dimensions. So yeah, clearly she has knowledge on how to do all this stuff now. So if there's no other purpose for it in the final episode coming up, it's just going to be cheap writing again, that we need somebody to know how to operate this machine. How are they going to do it? Oh, we'll just say that she existed for 200 years but hasn't aged a day. So I'm hoping there's more to it in the last episode.
And I know at this point in the story again, like the characters are not sure what to do. Hippolyta returns, and my note was she seems to be the only character with any idea. Like,
Yeah.
so she immediately goes like, okay, cool, we're going to travel back through time. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. This is how we're going to save it. We're sort of sitting there. The other, like old Tick and Letty and Montrose are all just sort of doing much of a muchness. They have no clue what to do. And like, yet again, this sort of ties in with the fact that Hippolyta is like one of the stronger and better written characters, at least, right?
Definitely, yeah. Still, that family, that Freeman family, that's the rock of this series. They can handle anything thrown at them, except for bullets, apparently.
And I like to give a shout out. Like one of my little high points of this episode was when Hippolyta is like there in the observatory and she says, "I'm going to jack into the machine." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, Neo would be just like
Yeah.
crying a little tear of joy, going like, yeah, that makes me proud." Like
I recall having
that
the
was really cool.
same thought, like, oh, she's going into the Matrix, yeah.
So yeah, I think like that would probably yet again, like at this point, it was really interesting to see how last year and this year we've had these two shows, like I said, Watchmen and Lovecraft Country now, folks in Tulsa Massacre, because pretty much the rest of the episode was set in Tulsa in 1921, right?
Yeah.
I think when you mentioned, like for instance, with Montrose, like how his father beat him, and this time Letty and Tick could see this for themselves, like. I think like one of the thematic elements of this series as such is how violence begets violence. Like we've
Yeah.
got Montrose's father like whipping him here with this branch in the front yard for not being enough of a man, at least in his eyes. And then we've got Montrose doing that to Atticus, and then we've got sort of Atticus nearly doing it to Letty in a previous episode.
Yeah.
So it's been nice to see that, like not just with their family, but some of the other characters have also had like points where they've sort of, like you said, one of our previous shows with Ruby, who when she's got this power to turn into this white woman, sort of discriminates against the other colored woman who works at the department store she's at. So that was a nice little sort of thematic point in there, I thought. And then a bit of a thing. I remember when Atticus has to try and find Montrose. Him and Letty have to split up. And I just remember they had that sort of 1920s car there. And I was like, how does Letty know how to hotwire a 1920s automobile? Because she just like whips open the bonnet, like gets these two
Yeah.
wires, goes then, there the car starts and they drive away. I was like, okay. Like, how does she know how to do that? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet again, I know at some point, like, she was being chased, if I remember again, or being shot at.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, every single episode where she's got a strong role is like, she just has to run really fast. That seems to be her superpower. That was like, okay, what is Letty going to do in this situation? She's going to run. And conveniently, she's wearing sneakers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I still recall that when the three of them are walking down after just having appeared, and they're all dressed period appropriate, except Letty and except in her sneakers. And I know that plays a bit of a role, not just in her running away, but who was the old woman again? That sort of
That was I think the aunt or whoever that they talked about like 2 or 3 episodes back, where when
oh
when Tick went to St. Louis, because he was looking for the Book of Names, and they said that I think it was maybe like the great great granddaughter of that ancestor that escaped from the Braithwaites. She was the one who had the book, but was lost in the massacre when the house was burned. So that was the woman that they mentioned, the dead relative that they mentioned before.
Because it was convenient. It's just like, oh, I saw your shoes. You clearly,
Yeah,
there's something strange on
that's
you.
what I'm
Like,
saying.
oh,
It's
wait.
just such a cheap writing thing. It's just such poor writing that, like, okay, we gotta get dressed into period appropriate clothing, or they're going knows we're there. You're not going to realize you're wearing sneakers when you take that time to do everything else right. You're not going to be like, well, the sneakers are going to stand out. So it was
You
just
know,
a cheap writing trick.
like I feel there's like a better way to have done that, like by making us not notice that as the viewer either. But it's like as soon as the three of them are walking down the road, it's almost like immediately highlighted. At least
Yeah.
for me, it like I'm not necessarily like the most observant of viewers of TV shows always, but like immediately I could see like, oh wait. And then she's got that point where she's running from those racist guys who are trying to like shoot her at the start of this massacre. And yet again, we're sort of like, it's almost like shoved in our face, like, hey, hey, did you notice she's wearing shoes that are not period appropriate? Maybe we're going to use that later.
Yeah,
Wink, wink,
yeah,
nudge, nudge. And then it's pretty easy to see that's the way it's going. But
yeah.
I mean, I suppose we can sit here for hour upon hour and poke holes in like the writing skills of the
And we
show, as we
have
have pretty much
already. We
done. Yeah.
have, in fact.
Um, on a positive note again, like for me, I've always found time travel stories, whether or movies, always to be fun to watch. They're always like really nice, you know.
If they're done well.
And I do think then I'm gonna sort of like fast forward a tiny bit, like towards the end where Tick finally catches up with Montrose.
Mm.
Like I really do like the chance that they finally got this chance to reconcile their differences. Like there's been this tension between the two characters, and this is the first point where I felt like Atticus sort of could see the more human side of Montrose.
Mm.
Could see like, oh, why he is the way he is, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
And especially my little highlight at the end was like where Montrose has got this memory of this Jackie Robinson looking guy who comes in and beats all these racist thugs with a baseball bat. And then we find out like, oh, it's Tick.
It's Tick,
And
yeah.
maybe a bit it's a bit heavy on the head there. Like we can see this pretty easily coming, but I still thought it was like a nice little twist at the end. Oh, although I would have thought like surely Montrose would have recognized like by now, like, oh wait, you're the guy I saw when I was a kid beating all those thugs. Unless like his childhood memories and trauma, I suppose. But
I would
yeah,
imagine after 30 some years and just a guy you only saw once in the night probably would blend in, that
yeah,
when you saw your son growing up, you would probably not think, oh, that's him, because you've seen him grow from a baby into a child into a teenager, and that probably, even if he did remember, he would probably just think the memory was bleeding in, because now Tick himself has grown into this big strapping
yeah.
young lad. So probably like, oh no, that's all I see when I see the guy saving me. It looks like Tick, but that couldn't be Tick because that was 30 years ago. So probably wouldn't remember there, but I I thought it was a nice moment. I thought it's good that how, like you said, they're coming together, and then he actually saves his father. He actually goes out there and stands up for his father when his father's a little boy. But all I was thinking again, tying up these loose, inconsequential, just off the cuff comments that have happened in previous episodes that don't really
Mm.
mean much overall. But again, all I was thinking of was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where at the end, where Harry's waiting for his father to appear because his father came and saved him when the Dementors were attacking, but now he's back in time and he's like, "Look, I'll show you. My father was there. Come here." He hasn't shown up yet. What happened? Why isn't it going? And like, I have to take action. Then it was you all along. Spoilers for Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban, by the way. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't put off by this episode, but I wasn't thrilled with it too. And I haven't seen Watchmen yet, so I can't really comment on how they did Tulsa Massacre there. But like I've heard about it. I heard that that's a big point in Watchmen, and I just haven't got around to the series. But I agree with you that I don't like the way they use it. And going with the Emmett Till incident last week, going with the 30 years in the past now, Tulsa Massacre, like all these big keystone events in like just the civil rights history in America are all tied into these characters. Even when it's decades apart, they still manage to, through time travel, be part of it. It kind of reminded me like Forrest Gump, how in the movie Forrest Gump just manages to get into every like big milestone moment from the 60s and 70s and that, and like meets all the key players from that. It's like Forrest Gump or the Assassin's Creed series where you're just bumping into every big moment that has happened in that historical time frame. So it's not bad, but I just think it's sloppy. Especially like you said, because they're
Yeah.
not using it effectively. They're just being like, and he was here when this happened, and he was here when this happened, but he's not really tied to it.
Mm. And I think I don't know. I think, well, like a lot of the issues I have with the show comes with the fact that I don't even feel the writers are sticking to one sort of approach to the show either. You know, like we have like episodes where there's like tons of pulpy elements thrown in, and then the very next episode they're like, nope, 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 we're taking all that out. Now it's going to be a show that's going to strictly be dealing in a realistic aspect with maybe the racial tensions brought about by etc. etc. And then the next episode after that, they might throw more pulpy elements in or magic. It seems like I just don't feel like they're very confident with the way they want to approach the story, and it shows through in a lot of the writing and the plot and the characters. Like I just feel there's like a lot of wasted potential. I mean, I could feel very different, obviously, if I go back after this series and I read the book and I go like, oh, okay, the source material itself isn't really very great.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point, I feel like whether or not the book itself is good or bad or whatever, you've still got like the seeds of a really fun story that you could, use to write something much more intriguing and gripping and fun to watch. But I just feel like this is a countdown. Thank goodness there's 10 episodes
Yeah.
because, I'm gonna run out of fingers soon to count how many there are. But I'm just glad. Like I have no idea how the last episode is going to end, and to be honest, I have no care in the world about how it's going to end. I just want it to end.
I'm looking forward to it for the exact same reason. It's like I don't have to worry about watching it just so we could talk about it on here. Like there's so much other great stuff about that really about Lovecraft that we could be
Mm.
talking about, and I I hate to say, I think we got suckered into the series because Lovecraft Country. It's like, oh, how great! We want to start practicing, get the channel set up. What a perfect time to get into this.
Mm.
Wrong. No, this is not Lovecraft at all. And I mean, I know a lot of people enjoy it, and there is a lot to enjoy about it. But we're both coming at it from a Lovecraft angle as fans of H.P. Lovecraft's particular brand of cosmic horror. And again, I knew it wasn't going to be explicitly Lovecraftian going in. I just was expecting for something a little bit better from like Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams. Jordan Peele is involved with this, right? I've heard that like for years. I think he is. I don't know. I'm just sad. I'm just very sad.
Yeah, I suppose a good thing I take from it at least is years like this sort of tentpole big series on HBO, um, and all the main characters are of color,
Mm.
which I really enjoy. Like because I feel like these sort of stories, like sci-fi, horror, whatever you want to take it, it tends to always have like a predominantly white cast. And as a viewer, like that almost can seem repetitive in a way. Like you're seeing the same tropes
Yeah.
occurring always. So the one nice thing I've been taken away from this is that I'm seeing like a very black lead cast,
Yeah.
and that's nice to see. Um, but I don't know, like I just feel every time now I see a show that's got the words J.J. Abrams somehow attached to it, I'm always, no matter how little or how much he's involved in the show, I'm always sort of a bit more ambivalent about watching
Mm.
it because I'm anxious to see like, oh, is he going to do that trick again of this like mysterious box where
Yeah.
he tries to get us as the viewers
Yeah.
invested in something, and then he's like, okay, but you're never actually going to see what it is, or if
Yeah.
you do, it's going to be hugely disappointing.
But the thing
Um,
is, at least for a first season or something, if it's that, there's usually a solid and consistent storytelling in his series where it does hook you, it does intrigue you. It feels like it's going somewhere, even if by the end you realize it was never going anywhere. This one never felt like it was going anywhere. This one felt like it
yeah,
was
yeah.
just shooting off in five different directions and had no clue where it wanted to be. But I'm,
Like I,
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
sorry, the one thing I recall from one of our first shows was like, you were still talking about the idea that they were going to sort of do this as a anthology show in a way,
Mm,
right? With different styles of episodes and that. And I think that would have been so much better than just like having the sort of 10 episode arc
mm-hmm,
with this plot of them now, with this book of names and that, and then wildly different episodes within this one arc. They should just really do self-contained
yeah.
episodes. Each of them can be done in a different style, but because they're self-contained, it's much more believable
Well,
for us to
it
watch it and
actually
go,
looks like 10 self-contained stories that were just ripped apart and stretched over 10 episodes. So I
mm,
I think they had the fragments for 8 or 10 individual stories. But instead of letting them stand on their own, they're like, well, let's make this one plot point and we'll come back to it every 3 episodes. Let's make this one plot point. We'll do it for 2 episodes and forget it even exists. It just, yeah, it doesn't have a name. Could you believe also that of an episode like this where we both said before we went into this that it was really not impressive. We really didn't take any notes. We have talked longer about this than we have about almost every episode thus far. We're already over our typical time limit here, and I find that
it's
surprising.
and what I suppose after 9 episodes, there's a certain amount of vitriol that builds
Yeah.
up, and it just gets to a point where you want to like share it with the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Be sure to tune in
but
next week, everyone,
conveniently,
for our 3 hour extravaganza ranting on episode 10.
old man rant at the sky. Ah. But I suppose like it's good timing actually because there's pretty much all I want and all I should have to say about this episode. I mean, it's better than other episodes in the series. It's worse than some others. It's pretty much like following the trope of the whole show, which is like let's try and make something average that you can forget within 30 minutes of seeing it. And knock me down, they did it
Yeah.
perfectly.
They
I've
are
forgotten a lot about the
succeeding
show.
admirably in that regard, unfortunately.
Very much so, very much so. So, well, unless there's anything else you want to say about it, I think I've successfully vented enough that I'm sure any viewers who have not tuned out
Yeah.
yet will have tuned out by now, I'm
I'll
sure.
just leave us with one question going into the final episode. Where the hell is Tick's pet Shoggoth now?
Shoulder shrug. That's everything we always do in this. Right? It's just like, "Ah, who knows? Who knows? Let's open an ice cream stand in
Yeah.
Tulsa. Who knows?
Yeah.
Whatever.
That's
But
one last thing I do. I know we're so far over our usual
mm,
time, but I want to bring up because I mentioned you before. Now I swear to God, 3 or 4 episodes ago when Hippolyta disappeared, they were in Kansas. And then in this episode, when they go back to the same place, we finally get a title on screen and it says Kentucky. And I think that I just made your head explode because you shrunk on screen again, just at the mere mention of that absurdity. And I'm glad we're ending this on an absurd note because damn it, I don't get what's happening there. I'm using my
see,
glowing potion for you. Okay.
I feel it's like somebody like me that's been writing the show, and I'm just like, Kansas, Kentucky, same thing. Who cares? And just like throw these names on there. They both start with a K. But I
Wherever.
definitely, I think I'll rewatch that and just see. But I mean, if it's like that, then oh man, that just fits in with the whole thing about the shoddy writing.
Walking underground from Massachusetts to Chicago. Stop shrinking on me, Terry. I'm trying to make a point here. But I guess it's our bandwidth again. I think it's a bandwidth saying that, yo, guys, you're well over time now. I think it's about time to wrap up. So why don't we just do that before you reenact Honey, I Shrunk the Kids again? Oh, and you did
Well,
it
I
again,
suppose
you bastard. Okay.
use your story. People should leave comments on the YouTube or send a little voice message to the link in the podcast. That's the two main ways like we get our material out there. And then I know there's the little Instagram if you want to see like really cute photos of Shoggoths tearing people to pieces or unspeakable horrors. There's the Twitter if you prefer the shorter style of cosmic horror. I'm sure at one point we're gonna like write a short form story just using Twitter's like character limits, which would be nice. I do know like in like a forthcoming episode, like we should actually attempt maybe something exciting for NaNoWriMo that's
Yeah,
starting
yeah,
in
yeah,
a
yeah,
few
yeah.
weeks' time.
I'm
Of course,
yeah. Let's talk about that more on the future episode because I do have a bit to say about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
and for the rest of our viewers out there, like you can look forward to one more episode of our Lovecraft Country, and then I swear we are gonna drop that show like a hot potato and just never talk about it again.
Yeah, definitely. Uh,
Perfect.
yeah, I think we're done now, Terry. I just want to apologize to you. You'll see what I did on screen when you watch this episode later. But I thank you for wowing us with your shape shifting ability. Damn it, we have to end this episode now because this is getting ridiculous here. Again, people, this is a bandwidth issue since we're not set up in the right areas of the world we're supposed to be in there, so we're not dealing with all the equipment we're doing. So I'm just shifting your giant frame around the screen every now and then, letting you take over. So yeah, there
Nice,
you go. I'm putting you
nice.
dead center to end us. Okay, so no, I'm gonna try to put you back. Take us out, Terry. We gotta end this before it gets any more ridiculous.
Okay, folks, thanks for listening to us. Thanks for putting up with our meandering thoughts over this last, like, or close to an hour, I assume. I look forward to next week's episode. We'll be hitting on episode 10. This was, of course, Lovecraft Country, episode 9, Rewind, 1921. So look forward to more awesome material from yours truly and Mr. Ball, all the way from the land of the rising sun or rising Shoggoth. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, however you've consumed this, and we'll see you in another multi-dimensional show coming soon to a screen near you.
Hopefully, yeah. See you next week. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye bye.